Hey, hey! Welcome to episode 10 of Learn Swedish with Katrin. I have been receiving a lot of similar questions on Patreon in the past 1 to 2 weeks, so that confirms that you guys are ready for today's lesson. It's a very important lesson that most Swedish students skip over completely. Probably not on purpose, but it's just not a priority since it's not necessary for people to understand you. But even though it doesn't change the meaning of what you're saying, it's an immediate sign that your Swedish is at a pretty low level. So that means that the opposite is also true. If you nail this concept when speaking and writing in Swedish, you are going to come across as very capable and sound very Swedish. Win, win, win. The topic we are going to discuss today is inverted word order. This is also sometimes called the V2 rule, and it's not at all as complicated or intimidating as it might sound. It's just a tiny change in word order activated by a very specific kind of words. V2 means that the verb, V, appears in the second, to, position in the main clause, regardless of what comes first in the sentence. Here are 3 examples. Han äter mat. He's eating food. Nu äter han mat. Now he's eating food. Innan vi gick ut åt han mat. Before we went out, he ate food. The verb is in the second position, V2, in all of these sentences. And the inverted word order activates when the sentence starts with anything but the subject. In these examples, adverbials. In sentences like the second and third, we have to rearrange the words. The subject, which usually comes first, moves to the position after the verb when an adverbial is placed at the beginning. This is because the verb must hold the second position in the main clause. For Swedish students, this is often a difficult pattern to master. It's not hard to intellectually understand the rule itself, but internalizing it to always place the verb in the second position is much harder. Many new speakers of Swedish do not follow this rule and instead place the verb in the third position, V3. This gives Swedish the same structure as English. Nu han äter mat. In terms of someone understanding what you're trying to say, this doesn't matter much. There are multiple examples of native Swedish speakers also deviating from the V2 rule, so we're hardly unaccustomed to hearing V3 sentences. Han kanske åt mat. Han nästan skrattade av glädje. The type of V3 sentences that native speakers of Swedish use are not perceived as symbolically problematic, but V3 sentences that do not belong to these accepted patterns have a strong symbolic value. Few things signal beginner Swedish as clearly as V3, and V3 has also become almost an iconic marker of suburban Swedish. Many new speakers of Swedish never internalize an automatic V2 structure. It could partly be because it's not 100% necessary. There are rarely misunderstandings due to not following the V2 pattern. Despite the difficulty, some learners do manage to internalize the V2 rule. It just takes some extra effort to learn a part of the language that isn't completely necessary, but makes a huge difference in the way you sound. You have to be self-motivated to get it right. So, in today's episode, I want to help you kickstart this learning journey, and I absolutely believe in your ability to get it right. You just have to focus and take it slow. Another way of explaining what the V2 rule is, and the way that honestly makes more sense to me personally, is that when a sentence starts with when, what, why, where, or whom, the subject and verb switch spots. Let's compare the two. Jag vaknar på morgonen. I wake up in the morning. På morgonen vaknar jag. In the morning I wake up. Jag äter frukost efter det. I eat breakfast after that. Efter det äter jag frukost. After that, I eat breakfast. Jag tränar på kvällen. I work out in the evening. På kvällen tränar jag. In the evening, I work out. All of these sentences are correct. But when they start with when, so på morgonen, efter det, and på kvällen, we have to put the verb before the subject, not after it. Remember, if you want to follow along in the transcript, go to patreon.com/slow Swedish and join us for only $10 per month. Then you'll be able to study these concepts with all the materials to go along with them. So, if both of these sentence structures are correct, why bother learning the inverted word order? Why not just use the standard word order for the rest of your life? Well, you could, but you would also sound insane. We do not speak that way naturally. I always hear Swedish students want to start their sentences with when, what, why, where, and whom. It's a natural part of how we express ourselves. But in order to do that, we need to remember to switch the subject and the verb. Let's look at some more examples. Jag hjälpte honom igår. I helped him yesterday. Honom hjälpte jag igår. Him I helped yesterday. Jag åkte hem på grund av det. I went home because of that. På grund av det åkte jag hem. Because of that, I went home. Det är lite snö i södra Sverige. There's little snow in southern Sweden. I södra Sverige är det lite snö. In southern Sweden, there's little snow. Det var semmeldagen i tisdags. It was the semla day on Tuesday. i tisdags var det semmeldagen. On Tuesday, it was the semla day. Jag köpte 1 kilo bananer på affären. I purchased 1 kilo bananas at the store. 1 kilo bananer köpte jag på affären. 1 kilo bananas I purchased at the store. Jag har ont i benet just nu. I have pain in my leg right now. Just nu har jag ont i benet. Right now I have pain in my leg. The trickiest part in all of this might be to correctly identify what counts as a when, what, why, where, and whom start, and what doesn't. The word when, for example, när, does not activate inverted word order. Let's look at 3 different versions of the same sentence to understand why. We are going to describe our trip to Greece last summer and the fact that it was warm. I was in Greece last summer is jag var i Grekland i somras. You can also say förra sommaren, but i somras is super common too. Det var varmt. It was warm. So the 3 sentence options are: jag var i Grekland i somras. Det var varmt. När jag var i Grekland i somras var det varmt. I somras var jag i Grekland och där var det varmt. Sentence 1. Jag var i Grekland i somras. Det var varmt. Uses traditional word order. Sentence 2. När jag var i Grekland i somras var det varmt. Uses traditional word order first, then switches to inverted. Sentence 3. I somras var jag i Grekland och där var det varmt. Uses inverted word order. Why? Let's go through them one by one. Jag var i Grekland i somras. Det var varmt. Here we have 2 independent sentences that both follow the traditional word order: subject, verb, object. They start with the subject, jag and det. The first sentence tells us where and when you were, and the second describes the weather. This structure is common in spoken language when we don't want to use long sentences. Examples: jag åt på en restaurang igår. Maten var jättegod. I ate at a restaurant yesterday. The food was really good. Vi åkte till stranden. Det var blåsigt. We went to the beach. It was windy. När jag var i Grekland i somras var det varmt. The first part, när jag var i Grekland i somras, is a dependent clause. It gives background information when something happened. The second part, var det varmt, is the main clause with the important information. So, because of this, när jag var I Grekland I somras, all gets lumped into the when and where category, which activates inverted word order in the main clause, creating var det instead of det var. When a sentence starts with a time phrase or dependent clause, the verb in the second part must come before the subject, or the V2 rule is applied, or the verb and the subject switch spots, however you want to think of it. Examples. När jag vaknade var det mörkt. When I woke up, it was dark. När vi kom fram till hotellet var rummet inte klart. When we arrived at the hotel, the room wasn't ready. I somras var jag I Grekland och där var det varmt. The sentence starts with the time phrase I somras. So the verb must come before the subject in the main clause, var jag I Grekland. The second part, och där var det varmt, adds extra emphasis on location. It connects the second part to the first by saying there. And remember, starting a clause with where activates the inverted word order, making it var det varmt rather than det var varmt. You could, in theory, say I somras var jag I Grekland och det var varmt där. In that case, the second clause starts with the subject, det, and is followed by traditional word order, var varmt. Examples. I vintras var vi I Sverige och där var det kallt. Last winter we were in Sweden and it was cold there. Förra veckan var jag sjuk och då var jag hemma från jobbet. Last week I was sick and at that time I was home from work. As you can see, this is kind of like an equation you have to piece together. What goes where and why? For better and for worse, as I mentioned earlier, this is not necessary to be understood. You will get by your entire life without mastering this rule. But I would like to foster an environment where we value this rule and make it a priority. Can we agree on that? Let's virtually shake hands. So on Patreon this week, I will pack the exercise document with loads of useful exercises to get familiar with this rule. You might not master it right away, but I want you to be able to correctly identify it in sentences going forth, especially in your own homework. To access all the study materials, go to patreon.com/slow Swedish and join us for only $10 per month. Thanks for listening. Vi hörs nästa vecka. Hej då!